And now this, President Obama. Now he says that xenophobia, what's that, the fear of foreigners or dislike of foreigners, xenophobia, that's to blame for Britain leaving the European Union. Roll tape.
There is a xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment that's flashing up, not just in Great Britain, but throughout Europe, that has some parallels with what Mr. Trump has been trying to stir up here.
Okay, David Webb is here. What are your thoughts on what you just heard from President Obama?
You know, when President Obama doesn't have a point that supports what he believes, he starts to paint everyone as someone to run away from. So you get 17 million plus voting to leave the EU. You're 17 million plus Brits. That means that there are 17 million plus xenophobes. When it comes to Trump, you've got millions who voted here in this country for Trump. They're all xenophobes. Let's use some common sense. Are that many people xenophobes, or are they concerned about the economy, about terrorism, about the issues that are in their countries?
No, I don't think it's xenophobia, Liz. I think,
no, but I'm pointing out the ridiculous nature of this.
But why can't we control our borders?
Right,
That's
and
not xenophobia.
No, it's
this
not.
is what the president fails to acknowledge, is that member countries of the EU, you cited Sweden, the European Union, the EC, the committee, was deciding by fiat without member countries' consent on resettling migrants. So when the member countries are saying, hey, wait a second, we don't like what the bureaucrats are ruling and dictating to the rest of us, when people stand up and say, hey, wait a second, we don't feel safe, the president steps in, makes like it's racism or xenophobia.
But you know what else he
It's
ignores?
not racism to be safe.
No,
It's not just migration. The Brits and other countries are getting rules imposed on them, taxes imposed on them that they have to pay for. Their citizens have no say in the sovereign governance of their nations.
Right.
And that's not how it works in a democratic society.
Don't label me a bigot or a xenophobe or hatred of foreigners if I simply want to control who comes into my country.
Or what happens in your country. This is a key thing. You have a right to sovereignty. You have a vote in the British Empire. You have the ability to say what your government does. And the boys in Brussels say, no, you don't.
I do not understand why, in the week after the Orlando terror attack, and that's what it was, the week after that, 441 migrants were let into our country from
Without
North Africa.
They want background checks for guns, but they don't have good background checks for these migrants from countries where there's pervasive amounts of terrorism, and we're supposed to accept both? Come on, folks, I'm a common sense guy.
And by the way, of the 441 people who came into our country as refugees or migrants, call them what you will, right after Orlando, only 5 were Christians. That's it.
Right.
Christians are the people who are being butchered, for heaven's sake,
and that's
by
exactly
Muslims.
Genocide is the word.
Yes.
Right, and you don't see Christians doing these attacks. So here's to recap the number: 580 terrorist attacks and plots, since 9/11. Right? 580 attacks. 380 were foreign-born. 40 of them came from people who were refugees.
380 of the 580 attacks were launched by foreign-born people. This is in America, since 9/11, in America, and 40 of them were the refugees.
Yes.
Okay, that's the important word. Refugees, migrants, border crossers, illegals, they're refugees.
Correct.
That's what they did.
According to Senate Judiciary, yeah.
Okay. Is there any solution to this? I don't think there is.
There isn't a solution. There is a solution in your point about the Christians, and that is the Lautenberg Amendment of 1990, which allows us to prioritize those that have acts of genocide being committed against them. We have, under law, the ability to bring in Christians to help them, and it's a Democrat senator, Frank Lautenberg of New Jersey, that it's named after, but the Democrats ignore the very laws that exist.
But if we did that, we were imposing a religious test.
No, we're not.
Of course we're not. I agree with you entirely, David. I'm just,
But that's what they say. No, Stu, you and I are passionate about it. But you know why we're passionate? Because Americans in the free world actually want to help the people who are being targeted, regardless of who they are. Since when have I been a bigot if I want to let persecuted Christians who are being butchered up and down the line, since when am I a bigot if I want to let them in place of the people who are doing the butchering? I mean, there's something wrong with this. There really is.